the need for accurate and comprehensive indicators has never been more pressing. This workshop builds upon the momentum generated during our technical exchange at the SB60, the UN Climate Change Conference in Bonn, where we explored institutional arrangement for transparency in global loss and damage reporting. So that workshop provided us with some thoughts and we got to know the challenges that country have, and that's why it was the idea to have this workshop, and there will be also some following workshops after. So let me brief you for those of you who are interested to know more about what happened yesterday, because I can see some of you were participated yesterday, but for some, today is the first day. So yesterday, it was a successful day. We had quite many participants joining our 3 breakout sessions. We had the pleasure to have the co-chair of WIM come, and she provided us with some very insightful thought about an update about what's happening right now related to the work of ExCom on loss and damage. And also, she emphasized the importance of this workshop and this work looking into the best practice indicator in the context of upcoming WIM review at the COP29 and also ongoing UNFCCC's discussion. So she highlighted that refining indicators across sectors will support countries in reporting on loss and damage and communicating their needs. So we had this, the breakout sessions, we had 3 moderators, experts in the respective area that they moderated. Participants actively engaged in the ranking of the most and least important indicator from their point of view, from the priority that they had in their country, and they provided valuable insight on what indicator could be relevant to have it as a best practice indicator and could be relevant to have it as like a set of globally accepted indicator that everyone can start using them first and then they can expand on. So in the agriculture breakout session, that group emphasized the need for a comprehensive yet prioritized approach to indicator. And the key point was that we need to categorize the indicator. Maybe the idea is that by the event or considering disaggregate from the household, community, national level. And also, maybe there is a need to create a universal set of indicator while regional adaptation and adjustment needed. And also focusing both on terrestrial and marine coastal food production system is also important for this sector. And they also highlighted non-economic indicators like malnutrition, biodiversity loss, and loss of indigenous practices. Under the infrastructure, we had a focus on water, sanitation, education sectors, and the key finding included that expanding the definition of infrastructure beyond physical structure to include equipment and supplies, and also considering interconnected system and their complexities. Also emphasized the importance of educational continuity and its long-term impact, and the link between infrastructure damage and social issues like increased crime rates. Under the cultural heritage group, they emphasize the need of an open and flexible approach to indicator. And the key points was that recognizing diversity of cultural heritage losses, including both tangible and intangible aspects, considering the linkage between economic and non-economic loss, and acknowledging the temporal dimension of loss and their ripple effects. and discussing the challenge of measuring and reporting of non-economic loss and finding a way, maybe the value-based approach could be an approach to think of. So our next step, the conclusion was to compile the note that we have from this, and for all of you that you are interested, we will share a report based on our findings, and we put it out there for the open consultation, so you all have time to reflect on that. So let's now I can officially start looking into the objective of our workshop, because I think all people are joining now. So the workshop today is the objective is to develop or try to develop a comprehensive loss and damage best practice indicator list, also to enhance the country's capacity for loss and damage measurements and reporting, and to coordinate loss and damage transparency with international process by aligning effort with global frameworks, including the Paris Agreement, the Warsaw International Mechanism, and to enhance the consistency and comparability of loss and damage reporting. And we expect that we get at least a deeper understanding of loss and damage indicators and reporting tools that are directly applicable to UNFCCC's process, because it's a new exercise and there are not that many reporting templates out there that it's been used. So that is a new initiative that we all need to contribute to. And also to facilitate the production of set of this best practice indicator that helps experts that they are in the country, that they have a responsibility to report on their loss and damage or measure their loss and damage to know where to start. And also it can help countries and facilitate their access to support through the Santiago network. And also creating a regional diverse pool of experts per sector. Now that we have this breakout session for 6 sectors by today also, so we get to know each other, and we can continue with this pool of experts and share our findings and practical tool to be able to have a meaningful progress in this area of loss and damage. So today, as I mentioned, we are going to focus on health, human mobility, and tourism. And these sectors have been identified as particularly vulnerable to climate change impact. And our discussion will aim to develop robust indicators for each. So as you see, we have a big pack agenda here today. We start after the introduction by me. We will have a speaker, Dr. Mireille Atalla, and then we have breakout sessions started. So I will provide you with some housekeeping note related to the breakout sessions. And we will have a small coffee break, 10 to 15 minutes. And then we come back with a group presentation and a general discussion and question and answer. And then we will have the conclusion. So I would like now to invite our speaker, Dr. She's head of the Nature for Climate branch of UNEP. She has a 20 years professional effort that working in the mitigation and adaptation and loss and damage as well, and leveraging and mobilizing environmental fundings and programming at the country level, as well as rolling multiple partner funds to support land use finance, climate, nature, and international water. So floor is yours, Mireille, and thanks for being here.
Fatemi, thank you very much, and thank you very much for the update from yesterday's meeting. Greetings and good afternoon, in my case, to everyone from Bali, from Indonesia, where we are discussing something very similar with ASEAN countries in relation to monitoring, reporting, and verification for land use and land use finance, including for loss of either ecosystem services or loss of spatial areas as a result of climate impacts and environmental degradation more broadly. So a very big welcome to all our participants. I see we have a quite nicely packed meeting today. And so I'm really hoping that with this, the representation and groups will have a broad participation from different perspectives and different areas of the world. In our work in UNEP's work on loss and damage more broadly, I think I would first and foremost like to acknowledge the Adaptation Gap report of last year, where we had a dedicated chapter or a deep dive chapter in relation to loss and damage. And as we are working in an environment that is still evolving with the WIM review, with a loss and damage fund that doesn't yet have its operating framework and procedures, with the Santiago network that has just launched or initiated its work in terms of concrete processes. Maybe a couple of reflections that will help us in framing our thinking with respect to the rest of the workshop. First and foremost, I think, at least from the UNEP perspective, is that loss and damage is really when we have failed to mitigate and we have failed to adapt. This is when losses and damages occur. And we feel like that it's really important that we start and anticipate potential losses and damages, but that these also act as a basis for our advocacy, for more investments in mitigation, more ambition in mitigation, and for more financing and action on adaptation. Every single year, the Adaptation Gap Report concludes with the same, and the Emissions Gap Report pretty much conclude with the same outcomes, that we are not doing enough. And the fact that we already have a decision and a fund for loss and damage should also, kind of channel our collective efforts so that we are much more, so that we are hedging the risk, and that this residual risk of losses and damages is as minimal as possible. Nonetheless, if we don't measure, we don't know, or as we say, we don't know what we don't measure. And therefore, I'd also encourage us to think about these indicators for loss and damage also in the continuum of the discussion on the global goals on adaptation and their associated indicators and targets. How do we differentiate between the two in assessing and looking at climate risk assessments, and where and how we are hitting hard limits to adaptation? It may be that we are hitting hard limits to adaptation in certain geographies or in certain sectors, but not across the board in a given country. And the more difficult one is also, how do we measure resilience of societies, economies, and ecosystems? We know from the IPCC reports that we are starting to hit some levels of ecosystem degradation and collapse that may lead to feedback mechanisms that we have not anticipated yet. And we also know that climate impacts are materializing in a way that we hadn't anticipated. And so what we are seeing is shocks that, take the case of Malawi, for example, with Hurricane Freddy in 2022, end of 22, if I'm not mistaken. Malawi had never experienced any hurricanes. So how can a country that has never experienced a certain typology of climate shock prepare for this climate shock and assess for it? Second, what we are also seeing is that we're having recurring shocks even in countries and areas where we did have hurricanes, to stay on that same example, what we are seeing is either a shifting of the hurricane season and or recurring climate shocks. And so how is resilience and hard limits to adaptation actually challenged when we face multiple shocks as opposed to a single shock is also possibly a second area to think about. And lastly, for slow onset events, it's of course one of the most challenging areas, but it's also where the life web that we depend on and where the critical redundancy in species and ecosystem services is challenged, and where those services may no longer be available for provision of water, for provision of food, where we can have challenges in terms of food security. And so before I conclude, I would just like to draw attention on the extreme heat call to action that was issued by the UNSG. This acknowledges actually the fact that we need to start redesigning the way we live, the way we work, the way we operate. By way of example, we estimate, the ILO estimates that particularly in agriculture and in rural or nature-based employment, there may be a need to rethink working hours, water breaks, availability of water, bringing water closer to workers, but also rethinking working hours so that farm workers are not exposed to the hottest working hours. And so in that sense, while we think about those indicators, it's also important to think about the cascading effects and how certain climate impacts may have not only repercussions on one of the sectors that we assess, for example, agriculture, but also can have a combined impact also on health related indicators. And so in conclusion, I think that this whole introduction is really to encourage us to think about how well-developed loss and damage indicators are really, really crucial for enhancing overall transparency, accountability, and most importantly, domestic response to climate action, because national governments and entities are the first respondents. And unless we have a very strong monitoring framework to enable this response and track its effectiveness, the rest of the suite of responses and actors will not be effective either. So with this, I'm really hoping that everyone will have very productive working group discussions, be bold, be provocative, think out of the box, because we are really entering into territories that we haven't tested before. And so we can afford to think out of the box and be really bold in our thinking and in our approaches. Thank you very much, Fatemeh.
Thank you very much, Mireille, for your great points and also emphasizing of the importance of this work. So now I would like to open the breakout room session. But before that, I would like to introduce you our valuable moderators who will be supporting the breakout group discussions. So today we have three moderators. We have Csaba, Mr. Csaba Nyirenda, joining us from UNEP. Csaba is a climate-induced loss and damage specialist at UNEP, and he has been engaged in shaping UNEP position and a strategic direction on climate-induced loss and damage tracking. And also he supports the negotiation process on the UNFCCC. Csaba will lead or moderate our breakout group for the tourism. We have Arthur Baines here with us, joining from Sydney, I assume. He's moderating the health session today. And Arthur is the former health advisor on the COP28 presidency and the former climate change advisor on the World Health Organization. So we have also Miss Liliana Puskas. She's joining us from IMO, focusing on the human mobility and moderating that group of human mobility. Liliana has an extensive background and knowledge on migrations, climate change, and risk reduction. And she has a key role with IOM at the platform on disaster displacement. And she leads IOM engagement with UNFCCCs and climate commitments under the Global Compact for Migrations, including COP28 and loss and damage deliberations. So before you all will be joining to the breakout session automatically, you don't need to click on any link or leave the call. But before joining that, I will provide you with some small housekeeping notes. So when you join, you will have 15 minutes that the moderator will walk you through the list of existing indicator, and that's just for inspiration that we provided you. There are so many other indicators that may not be reflected in the list that you have. So that's actually our request that you think about it, and you share your idea and thought with the moderator that what indicator in your point of view is missing and it has to be added, and what indicator it's irrelevant or relevant. So you start the ranking exercise, and you also received some breakout group discussion questions, and that's also for inspiration. If you think that there are other things that you would like to discuss about and share, please go ahead. And if possible, when you are in the breakout session, turn your camera on, then you can see each other, and it should be like a bit more friendly virtual talk. So that's 3 minutes discussion you will have there, and then the last 15 minutes, there will be a ranking exercise to summarize your thought. And also, we would like to hear your feedback on the reporting template that we also shared with you. So I encourage you all participate actively, share your insight, and contribute to the development of this vital tool, because that's our opportunity that we reflect our needs in those indicators development. And also, I would like to say that this is a closed workshop, invitation only, and we are going to record the breakout session only. We are using it for our sake to make note of that. We are not going to share it publicly. So please feel free to share your thoughts and your opinion freely in breakout sessions. I will be joining together with my UNFCCC's colleague to each breakout sessions. So we will take a note. So if you have any technical issues, please use the chat box. And also during the breakout session, you use the chat box for also providing your notes. So good luck with your discussions, and we will reconvene in main session in an hour. Thank you. So now we slowly will be assigned to the breakout session.
Hello, please can you confirm that we are already in the breakaway?
No, we are getting a sign yet. We are
Okay, thanks.
getting the line.
Can you let us know which breakout room you want to attend?
Myself.
Yeah, if
Yes.
everyone can write it in the chat, then it makes process a bit faster for Iris.
I think I was in the migration, if there's something like that.
Human mobility.
Mobility, yes, in the mobility. And also I see Lazarus Chapungu should be in the mobility there.
Sorry, I rejoined on a different email because of issues from yesterday, but would like to join the health room, please. Thank you. This is Swati.
Okay, could you please write it in the chat then? It's with your email.
Thank you.
Hi, Fatima, you can join by yourself because you're an organizer. Just go to the breakout room that you want, click the three dots and click join, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Hi, good morning, greetings. Please, I haven't been assigned. I would like to be assigned to the health room, please. Thank you.
Iris, I think I cannot go to human mobility. I don't think I can. Health and tourism is possible, but human mobility is not. Okay, now I'm joining.
Can you send me to the health breakout group, please?
Click on join.
Hi.
Hi, Melissa. Welcome to the training session, to the event. Which breakout room would like to be assigned?
Hi, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Awesome. I was having technical difficulties, so I was trying to sign in and out. But I think tourism.
Hi, hello, Silosius. Which breakout rooms would you like to attend?
So thank you very much, everyone. I think we are all back to the main session. So I hope you have had a fruitful discussion at the breakout session. So I would like to announce now we have time for break around 10 minutes. Please be ready after 10 minutes that we can slowly start the group presentations and the plenary. Thank you. So welcome back, everyone. I think people are back from break mostly. I hope you found the breakout sessions productive and insightful. So I would like now to open the part 2 of our workshop, which is the group presentations and the general discussion. So over the next 35 minutes, we will hear from our 3 sector moderators about the key outcomes and insight from their respective breakout groups. And each moderator will have about 10 minutes to present their findings. And also I would like like a member of groups, if they want to add anything, please feel free to raise your hand and add any insight in addition to the moderators. And then you all have opportunity to ask questions. Please use also the chat if you don't want to say it over your microphone, so you can write it, and then I can also read it for the moderator and ask the moderator to ask. Maybe some of you want to have question for other sector apart from the sector that you were assigned. So now I would like to ask our first moderator, Arthur Benz from the health sector breakout group. So please go ahead, turn on your camera and share with us how did it go with your session?
Thanks so much, Fatima. I hope you can see and hear me. Our session was absolutely incredible, and it's a pity we only had 1 hour because I feel like we only just got started and have also not been the best moderator. We actually didn't spend too much time going indicator by indicator. So all participants have promised me that they will send very detailed written feedback back to you. So expect lots of more comments coming in. Just a few highlights that really stood out to me from the discussions. I think it was quite clear that well, the health sector really is often at the forefront of actually responding to losses and damages. For example, in the case of an extreme weather event. And so the concept of universal health coverage came up quite a few times and ties in quite closely with loss and damage, because a well-functioning health system that provides the health services to an entire population is really the best way to prevent losses and damages from occurring in the first place. And so we should also think about indicators that really look at loss of health service coverage from climate impacts as well. Health is quite an interesting example, just because the health sector as a sector has a very extensive health information system already in place that collect lots and lots and lots of data already. That does mean that countries already have a really high reporting requirements. So it will be important, and they came up in the discussion in many different ways, that it will be important really to use that existing information system as much as we can and improve coordination. One issue with that came up a couple of times was that there's a need for cross-cutting data collection. The health sector itself has lots of health data, but often has very limited access to climate change data, so it doesn't really get matched up. And so there's a need to strengthen that sort of cross-cutting data collection and cross-cutting collaboration, really. But also really important to recognize that actually there are plenty of losses and damages to health and well-being that we don't really have good data for, and especially in low resource settings. And the fact that actually lots of countries don't have universal health coverage points to that as well. And so there is still very much a need for simple, low-tech ways to capture health-related losses and damages. And indicators also need to remain practical. That's another point that came up quite a bit. There's a need to actually be able to use these indicators quite easily, and they need to be able to support decision makers. So one suggestion that was raised was also to look at how can we combine some of these related indicators into indices or compendiums, so it's actually provides an easier overview for any decision maker to really get a sense of what's happening. And that is something that is often done for other complex health issues, creating sort of compendiums or indices that capture several indicators or several points of data. The most important recommendation really that was put forward, that came up several times, was that it's really important to be able to disaggregate data or disaggregate indicators, so it doesn't make inequities, that doesn't mask inequities and vulnerable groups. So it's really important especially for health-related loss and damage, that we can separate it along the lines of age, gender, economic status, And that relates to another point that came up quite a few times, that lots of loss and damage to health is actually socially mediated. And so impacts people, for example, through loss of livelihoods or through exacerbating, worsening existing inequities. And so that can be health loss and damage indicators can also be cost-cutting in other ways. So the damage to health infrastructure came up a couple of times as well. And so where should that sit? Loss and damage might also have knock-on effects on sort of loss of health services, as I said before. And for example, an increased caseload of incidences of caused by a certain extreme event might also lead to additional morbidity and mortality further down the track, and might overwhelm the health system further down the track as well. Last thing is that we also need to ensure the health outcomes that we capture are actually climate relevant or climate informed. Not all health outcomes are climate induced, right? And so for health in particular, I think the issue of attribution is still quite tricky. For certain health data, that's easier done than others, and extreme heat is a good example. For others, it's a little bit harder to separate the climate change signal from the wider health outcomes. And the last point is that a couple of times was also suggest that it would be good to capture the cost of inaction as well. And sort of the financial and health repercussion of inaction on climate change, and how that would drive health-related losses and damages. So those are just a few of the highlights. But yeah, I had an amazing group. So thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you very much, Arthur. Very valuable points that you bring up. Is there anybody from the health group or in general that has any question or a comment or said or any missing point? Please go ahead. Okay, so then let's move to tourism sector. I would like to ask Csaba, please go ahead and share with us some couple of words and how do you feel about the tourism breakout session, and yeah, your insights, please.
All right, thank you so much. We had a wonderful discussion in the tourism sector, and thanks to all the colleagues that were able to contribute. So just a few things that I managed to capture from our discussion is that first is the interconnection of tourism with other sectors. So first of all, we must recognize that tourism does not exist in isolation. There is quite a deep intertwined other sectors such as agriculture, infrastructure, talk about public health and energy, which also affect this. If when we think about the indicators, we need to think about it in a more complex situation, not just from one angle, which might think about me like climate angle, but we need to also look into these other elements that comes into play as well. And another important discussion which we had was around how best to categorize these indicators because there are so many, but now in terms of it's important that they are streamlined to make sure that we are able to identify specific impacts and enable that will enable more precise response mechanism. So a number of suggestions in terms of how best we can categorize it from the environmental perspective, from the economic perspective, but also from the psychological perspective, looking into local people's health, mental health, and stress and everything else. So and another important element is also to think about the indicators into from the private sector perspective, looking into the behavioral shift of the tourism sector itself to say think about the destinational impact and as well as the transportational impact. With increased vulnerability in other areas, that also means putting a pressure in other tourism geographic spaces, and the same on the transportation as well, increase in transportation, which also means there is also going to be another high emission levels increase. And there's also another element which was highly mentioned, that was the seasonal displacement. This also looking into the element of how we need to not just think about international tourism, but also domestic tourism and how it's affected by this seasonal displacement because of maybe climate-induced impacts and also consequences. At the same time, talking about different vulnerabilities, what we should focus as well as we're thinking about the indicators is to look into the resilience element, not just to think about the aftermath, but how best do we use the indicators that can help to inform communities and governments in making informed decision on the tourism sector, whether to shift within the area to say move the tourism maybe into a different space, or to think about the whole economy as a whole, not just thinking about what will happen aftermath, but how do we help also with the policy, the response mechanism, the resilience strategies that can help government to now build some sort of sustainable tourism on this. So these are some of the major issues that that came from the from the session, but there was also additional elements in terms of the indicators to look into good governance. What does it mean in terms of losing maybe indicators around the loss of good governance, also indicators around the lives of the community themselves on the tourism sector. So those are some of the additions that came up from the session. So if I've missed anything else, I would just encourage the participant, maybe they can also add. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chava, for a great summary. Thank you. I can see that you had a quite fruitful discussion in the tourism sector. So if is there any more addition to what Chava said, please go ahead. A couple of seconds, we can wait. Okay, so I would like to ask Liliana, please go ahead and share your insights and summary about human mobility. Of course, human mobility is not a sector, but we had a really good discussions in that breakout session. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much, and very good to be with you, dear colleagues, today. I'm Ileana Sanziana Pushkash from the International Organization for Migration, and I had the pleasure to moderate a great group of colleagues specializing in different aspects of human mobility, whether from UN agencies, from member states, from civil society, from researchers. So we had quite a broad discussion on the indicators proposed to us today. Our reflection as a group started first to look at how can we consider human mobility in the context of loss and damage in a way that it actually leads to indicators. We know human mobility is institutionally now part of UNFCCC and categorized as a non-economic loss, but we also know that this has challenges when we go into measuring human mobility as a loss and damage. And there was discussion perhaps to consider human mobility as an impact of climate change and also as an adaptive response to climate change. We've discussed the existing indicators, and we've looked at them, and most of the group agreed that the existing indicators that we have now are actual proxies to human mobility. They do not necessarily capture human mobility and all its forms in the context of climate change. So then we looked at, okay, if we know that existing indicators have a gap, what could be the some forms of indicator for human mobility in the context of climate change? We discussed for this, we discussed the different types of human mobility. So we looked at displacement, we looked at protracted displacement, we looked at immobility, trapped populations, nomadic populations. We also brought up the question of planned relocation and what does it mean in the context of climate change. So we looked first at the type of movement that could be captured as part of the indicators, and then also at the types of environmental drivers Do we focus specifically on slow onset events or sudden onset events? And does that make a difference for the indicators on human mobility? We thought that there are certain indicators that are quite easy perhaps to propose or very straightforward, like low-hanging fruits. The number of displaced persons from a specific extreme weather event, the number perhaps of relocated people in the context of a specific slow onset event, the number of trapped populations in a specific environmental driver. And then we consider the different aspects that we need for these indicators. We were talking about having do we need to make a difference in the indicators, whether the human mobility that took place is permanent or temporary? Is there a difference on, do we have to make a difference on when, where, and the location of the environmental driver that caused the human mobility or that influenced people to be trapped? Do we need to focus on that location? Do we need to focus on the duration of the mobility aspects as well? And we also discussed perhaps some of the proxy indicators that could help us to get certain elements related to human mobility in the context of climate change. We were talking about the rates of mortality, for example. Would that help us to understand better human mobility? Would identifying the health risks among the mobile community or the trapped population help us to better understand the needs of people on the move or people whose mobility has been affected by climate change? And also, what are their facility needs or the protection needs as well? We went a bit into the proposed template from UNEP as well. We didn't manage to go fully through it, and I would like to invite my fellow colleagues from the Human Mobility Group if they want to add to that template. But the short discussion we had on it didn't identify any issues necessarily with the template. There were some proposals for an addition, perhaps to add the location aspect of the indicator. I'll stop here, and I would like to invite the colleagues from my group to complement my intervention and also to add any points that we didn't manage perhaps to touch upon. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Liana. It was very great to hear all the important points that you mentioned. So if anyone wants to add anything, please go ahead, or if you have any questions, please, now you have the time. Otherwise, yes, I can see a hand. Yes, please, Professor Kist, go ahead.
Yes, thanks a lot, Pushka, for the very good summary of our session. I think maybe one thing I would like to highlight is that the Human Mobility Group maybe has a more complicated tasks than the others, because in the other groups you can really say like there's a loss or damage to health, and then you can kind of unpack what health is and then come up with different indicators. But and the same in agriculture, like different types of agricultural loss or damage. But in the nature of this group of human mobility is more complicated, in the sense that we don't say like there's a loss of human mobility or damage to human mobility. So kind of it's like human mobility is not a loss and damage in itself. So that makes it more complicated. So what we see in the longer list of indicators are all kinds of especially non-economic losses and damages that are or can be associated with climate-induced migration or displacement. So impacts on community, social cohesion, sometimes identity. Those kind of things are like issues where that often arise from climate-induced displacement, but the mobility in itself is not a loss and damage. So I think, I mean, that kind of complements what Pushkar said, and it just makes it a little bit more complicated to come up with specific indicators if human mobility is not a loss and damage in itself. I mean, and I mean, we had discussions about this, and I'm voicing my own view here. And maybe not everybody necessarily agrees with that, but it makes it a little bit more complicated for this group, I think.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, correctly said. It's a bit difficult for looking into that because, as I said, it's not a sector, and as you correctly mentioned, it's difficult to say, is it a cause of a loss and damage or is it not a really loss and damage? So thank you for that. Okay, I don't see any more hands up. So just to conclude our plenary, I would like to hear last word from moderator. If you want to say one last word, or if you want to focus, what would be our next step, or what would be our main challenge to address with this task ahead of us, please go ahead. We would like to hear from you. We start again with Arthur.
Thanks so much. Not much more to add, but just maybe also reflecting on the comments just from my migration colleagues. I think health in particular, but it might be true for quite a few, is quite a cross-cutting topic as well. It will be very interesting to look at synergies between especially migration and displacement and health as well. Yeah, and just to say that we really didn't have enough time with 1 hour, and there's lots to unpack. I don't think we've quite nailed down a manageable or workable list of indicators, and that would need quite a bit more time. And I think quite important as well for us to think about wider processes and quality criteria and concepts that could really feed into the loss and damage list of indicators. But yeah, look forward to the next steps.
Anything related to upcoming COP with your sector? Do you think any more aspect should be more emphasized related to loss and damage and health?
Maybe just to say that I think the health community in particular is quite closely paying attention to the global goal on adaptation and those indicators. So the health sector is often quite closely seen as a very relevant sector for adaptation as well. And I think that will offer very helpful lessons learned for us as well as we look at loss and damage indicators as well. So I think that there might be lots to be learned from the GGA process as well.
Great, thank you very much. What about you, Csaba? Please share with us some last word and your view for upcoming COP.
All right, so I think from the tourism sector, what is more important moving forward is to deeply look into the interconnection, because different from the other sector, this is more on personal level, and to truly measure the impact itself, to track as well, to say assess in the context of loss and damage, it can be a little tricky without considering all these other factors that have to come into to play on this. So in terms of the coming COP, I'm not sure that what's going to be the key negotiation point. So that would be my comment for now.
Thank you, Csaba. We ask Iliana, human mobility, please.
Thank you so much. In terms of COP29, I think when it comes to human mobility and loss and damage, we are in a very good position. All three arms of the loss and damage landscape now, the Santiago Network on Loss and Damage, the Warsaw International Mechanism on Loss and Damage, and the Fund for Responding to Loss and Damage, all three now acknowledge human mobility as being linked to climate change, and that it incurs losses and damages or as a form of loss and damage. So in that sense, human mobility is quite well integrated into the three arms of loss and damage, and both the policy, technical assistance, and financial assistance as well. This means that we are quite advanced into the thinking and into the work that and the action that needs to be taken. having indicators in order to better target the policy, the technical assistance, and the financial support would be very useful, but it should not be a limitation into the work that is being done. And we've heard this a lot from the negotiations of parties in UNFCCC, some asking for more control over the finance, some asking for less control, for example, national budgetary allocations when it comes to loss and damage. So these indicators, in as much as possible, they should support the work that is already committed to, but it should not be a limitation to what governments need to do or what governments or communities have needs for. Having indicators on human mobility linked to climate change would be useful, for example, when we look at technical assistance from the Santiago network. And we're very much interested to see the first requests for technical assistance and how they will be addressed. But when we look at financial allocation, that's where probably we have to be a bit more cautious. Because if some states have more capacities to implement indicators or better access to information, then that should not limit or make a difference between the financial allocation. That's my only consideration going to that I wanted to share with the group going to COP29 and also for the work ahead in the next 2 years as part of the different work programs. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Liana, for the great insight. So now let's move to the conclusion session. I would like to share some conclusion and remarks that over the past 2 days we have been taking some notes and collected some points. Of course, the more comprehensive list of conclusions and findings will be shared with you in a form of reports later on. But for now, we can list some outcome that one was about this workshop successfully could talk about, at least that narrowed down with the idea of refining sector-specific indicators, which was a need to be more focused on the sector, to identify what are the synergies between sectors and how to address that, and to be more a bit more precise about how would define economic or non-economic loss and damage metrics and how to prioritize it. And as we said, and it's been said many times during the breakout session, it's not a one-off process. It needs to be continued, and we need your participation, your collaborations, because as you all know, loss and damage is a topic that is very much linked with the civil society, with the communities, and we need their insight in order to be able to reflect on the correct and best practice indicators. Also related to the methodological advancement, some innovative approaches for data collection and analysis have been explored, including remote sensing, using AI, digital archiving, and big data analytics, and the need for standardized methodologies to encourage comparability across regions and sectors also emphasized. And as also Eliana correctly mentioned, the fact that some regions and some countries, they have better access to data and they can reflect on their loss and damage and provide like a loss and damage profile should not be like a way to allocate funding. So the one way of doing that to make sure that most countries, with all countries, they have access to the way and correct methodologies to be able to look into the loss and damage assessment. Also related to the importance of involving local communities, indigenous group, and sector-specific stakeholders in indicator development and also validation was very much highlighted, and strategies for balancing local knowledge with the standardized global metrics was also discussed. Also, the issue of alignment with the global framework It's important to ensure indicators are consistent with the UNFCCC's guideline. Also, it was also mentioned and highlighted during I was part of the human mobility session, and I'm sure in other groups also that was one of the points, and also the Paris Agreement and Warsaw International Mechanism. And we should also look into and lesson learn from Sendai frameworks and SDGs and UNESCO's convention and other existing frameworks that they can feed into the work for loss and damage development of indicator. And again, related to the technology integrations for sector-specific technology solution should be identified, like 3D mapping for cultural heritage, big data analytic for tourism, and also remote sensing for agriculture and other relevant sectors. Also, these are the next step that it's been listed, and of course there will be like more than this list, but that just for now to all see what we have ahead of us, enhancing data collection and measurements, improving attribution methodologies that also came out in breakout sessions, that invest in research to enhance attribution of losses and damages to climate change, particularly for complex sectors like health and human mobility. Also strengthening transparency and reporting by applying developed indicators to enhance reporting under the enhanced transparency framework, and create sector-specific reporting templates is an important job to do. Focus on the capacity building initiatives by organizing regional training workshops and develop online resources for continuous learning and support, and deepen collaboration and knowledge sharing by establishing informal network for continued exchange on loss and damage among non-Annex I countries, and create a digital platform for sharing best practices. That's also something that we are looking into. Strengthening the future ready research agenda is also an important step, an important part to be looking to by identifying priority areas for further research, including long-term impact of slow onset events and interconnection between sectors, sectoral loss and damage, because what you see, like, and it also came out in different breakout sessions, like different indicators, they are actually relevant for other sectors as well. So how should we go about it, and how should be reported? And also strengthening policy integrations, providing guidance on how to integrate loss and damage indicator into the national adaptation plan, as well as NDCs and NAPs, and in general, how to integrate the concept of loss and damage into the national policies in the country, and also explore ways to use indicator to inform climate resilience development strategies. So by now, we all heard and we agree that we didn't have much time because it's such a like a big topic, and we need for each sector to discuss and allocate much more time. So that's the work in progress, and it will be continued. And we invite you all to participate in our future event and follow up. And I would like to ask you, please share with us your ranking and your input and feedback with both the reporting template that we share with you, and also with a list of indicators. And if we have missed anything else, please let us know. You can share it with us, with your moderator, or with my email as well. So I want to express my sincerest gratitude to our speakers, moderators, and all participants for your valuable insight and dedication. And as I said, your contributions are crucial in advancing our collective understanding and approach to loss and damage. So I would like to conclude this workshop by highlighting a beautiful statement that made by Dr. Rodriguez yesterday, the co-chair of executive committee that we had her. She correctly reminded us that robust indicators are not just technical tools, they are means of telling the stories of those who are suffering the impact of climate change. So this quote beautifully, in my opinion, highlights the human dimension of our work and underscores the importance of developing comprehensive and accurate best practice indicator for loss and damage. So we look forward to seeing you all for our future events and consultation, and that we will build on today's progress and explore additional sectors. Thank you again and have a great day.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank
Bye.
you, Emma, Julia, and Joshita.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Julia, hi.